Hey, if you've ever thought about joining the Motivate with Coach Camp team, I'm going to let you know something. Now's your opportunity. So right now we are taking sponsors. And if you would like to be a sponsor, hey, look at the bottom of my podcast, click that link, fill out that information form, and we are going to get back to you. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Coach Camp. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Motivate with Coach Camp, produced by Shelby Road Productions. This podcast is intended to inspire, enlighten, motivate, encourage, and lead by example. So sit down, buckle up, and get ready to grow as we dive into this week's episode of Motivate with Coach Camp.
Wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better me. Better believe in your mind, cause it's everything. You can mold, shape, find almost anything. All it takes is some time and some clarity to find your identity. It's mind over everything.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Motivate with Coach Camp. I am down here in the sunny and beautiful studios of SRP with Mr. Derek Mishu. Hey, listen, folks, I want to tell you guys something right now. We are closing in on the end of 2023, and I did not want to go out of here limping into the next year. I wanted to go out with a bang. And so for December, I have lined up some amazing guests, and I am fortunate to have this next guest come on because I know, look, there are certain places that you just have to really work to carve out time of your day. And this individual was willing to do that, come down here and speak to me. And today I do have the mayor of Southaven, Mr. Darren Musselwhite. He's going to sit in studio with me for just a minute. We're going to talk about a few things, and we're going to end 2023 with a bang. So at this time, let me introduce to you Mr. Darren Musselwhite. How are you doing, sir?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on today.
Yes, sir. Look, I really do appreciate your time, of course. And when I started thinking about, hey, look, who would I want to wrap up 2023 with? You were highly recommended to me ahead of time. I was like, well, you know, it's a far shot. I'll make a phone call or two, see what we can work out. And here you are. So I want to dive into some ideas. First of all, let's get my listeners caught up as to where you're from and how you got down this road of becoming mayor.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not worthy of all that, but I appreciate that. But I've been mayor of Southaven since 2013. I'm a Southaven guy. Born in Memphis, raised in Southaven, graduated Southaven High School, lived most of my life back in Southaven, had a few years, about 6 or 7 years where I traveled playing ball, then came back home, started a business in the early 90s, and then did that until, running for mayor in 2013. I've raised my kids in Southaven, so Southaven's been pretty much my life.
Yeah, so growing up, you said playing some ball. So clarify that for my listeners.
Well, anybody that knows the Southaven back in the 1970s and 80s, that's what we did back then. You know, Southaven is a big baseball, softball city, youth football. You know, I played quarterback at Southaven High School in the 80s and started doing that in the youth leagues in Southaven. So baseball, football, basketball, that was pretty much what I majored in, as a kid. So a lot of other people, that grew up in Southaven back then would tell you how special it was. We're blessed with very unselfish parents and a lot of great coaches back then and teachers. So it was just a great place to grow up.
Who was the baseball coach back in the high school?
Well, the high school had several, but during my time, it was John Diaz was the head coach at Southaven back in those days.
Yeah, man, I tell you what, Southaven, they were our juggernaut. That was the Boston Red Sox to my Yankees. 1989, man, we thought we were going to take it all, and here comes Southaven.
Yeah.
And you guys ended up winning 6A state championship that year, I believe.
They did. Those guys were a few years after me. We had some great teams in the 80s, and then they kind of topped it off in 89, winning that state championship. So, they were a few years behind me, but I was super proud of those guys.
What position did you play?
Well, I was an infielder. I played third base and shortstop most of my life, but I also pitched. So then after Southaven, I ended up going to Ole Miss signing as a pitcher. And so I pitched in the SEC for 3 years.
Man, were you a lefty or a righty?
Righty.
Dang. Yeah. That's a tough break into. Who was playing down at Ole Miss back in that day?
Back in those days, we had my brother was there. My brother was actually the first player in DeSoto County to sign a D1 athletic scholarship. Back in '83, he signed with Ole Miss as a shortstop. Then in my later years, another DeSoto County guy, Lee Hodge and Paul Seals, two guys were there. But Kyle Gordon, who's still the all-time home run leader in Ole Miss history, was my teammate for a couple years. That record, still stands. But he was a great hitter. Had a lot of great players. We're pretty much a 500 team. We just were a little bit snake bitten, but had some great players.
Speaking of Ole Miss, what year was that?
86 to 89 is when I was there.
I cannot remember what years Will Clark played for Mississippi State.
He and Palmero left. Yeah. My brother played with them. They left in '85. So I just missed those two guys. Thank goodness. Didn't have to pitch to them. But Bo Jackson played for Auburn in '86, and so he was there during my time. Frank Thomas, I played against many battles against him.
Frank played for Auburn too.
Yeah, Frank was at Auburn, so he was a guy that we faced. Albert Bell, that was a 50 home run guy for the Indians for many years. He played for LSU back then, so it was a pretty, just like it is now. It was a tough league back then too.
Yeah, no doubt. SEC has been there for a long time. This when I started to bring you on, I was like, hey, look, let me look up some stuff on Mayor Musselwhite. And when I saw baseball, I was like, you know what? I could end up doing a whole show about baseball. That's my mojo, man. I love baseball. And the '80s actually was kind of the years that I was growing up and had all the baseball cards. And from the Bo Jacksons to what you just talked about, Albert Bell, the Big Hurt, and all those guys. The idea of facing them back in the day. Did you give up any dingers to any of the big names?
One of my, I guess, so-called claim to fame is I got lucky, but I did have Albert Bell's number for whatever reason, and I did strike out Albert Bell 3 times in a game. So that's one of my claims to fame. But don't let me kid you, he was pretty terrifying. When you saw him at the plate and the bat speed that he generated, and Frank Thomas, those guys were scary guys,
sure.
when they lined up. And of course, I did give up a home run to Mike Piazza a few years later. He's in the Hall of Fame, so I guess I helped him somewhat with his career.
Absolutely. So Mike Piazza, what college did he go to?
He went to a small school. He was that's one of the things that make his story so great. He was a real late round draft pick by the Dodgers. Mm-hmm. I want to say he was drafted in the 60-something round, but he was just one of those guys that just got it done and had a great career. I think he broke Johnny Bench's record for all-time home runs for a catcher.
For a catcher, I believe so, yeah. And I'm just going to say this for Mike Piazza. I'm not a Mets fan, obviously being a Yankees fan, but he does have one of what I would refer to as America's greatest hits when we had just come out of that funk but when everybody was in a moment of depression from 9/11 and they decided to play that game, and here comes Mike Piazza, and New York, obviously, having been affected by this more than any other city at that time, he hits this home run that just electrifies everybody. Mm-hmm. And, it's in the moment, and those big moments like that, you just really appreciate it. So anyways, this whole episode's not about baseball. For those of you that are wondering, it's like, oh gosh, Coach Camp's talking about baseball. But I do love baseball, and I could talk to you all day about that. But I am interested in more of the man. So growing up out of Memphis, coming down here to Southaven, it sounds like you grew up the majority of your lifetime here in Southaven. Obviously had a long career of sports, and then you want to go down the road of politics. So I'm curious about that. Did you have family members that were in politics prior to this?
I did not. That's this is kind of makes my story kind of strange, because in 2013 I never had aspirations of being involved in politics. My family was never in politics, and in fact that was one of my biggest concerns, and I did consult with my family before making the decision to run, because it obviously puts you in the public eye nonstop. Sure. And your family members are not immune to that either. Mm-hmm. when you become an elected official, it does affect your family members as well. But none of us had been involved in that before. My dad was a businessman. Now he was like a lot of dads back then. He volunteered to help the kids, and he ran the athletic booster club for the Century League. When I was a kid, he ran that for a year. So I remember what he went through. It's very similar to my job now. He was always on the phone solving problems. So that's the closest, I guess, that my family came to politics before me.
Yeah, so you decided to dive into this, and clearly what you just mentioned is absolutely a necessity is to have your backing from the family because, like you said, your family's going through this with you.
Yes.
How many kids did you have at that time?
3. I have 3 sons.
And what were their ages?
At that time, they were 13, 11, and 8, I believe. Yeah.
So did they know what Dad was doing? Did they understand that?
I don't know that they totally understood it. My wife, kind of explained to them, and I did as well. I don't know. They're kind of young to really wrap their head around what their dad was doing. But, since then they've witnessed, my political career, and they have a much better understanding of it now.
Yeah. So that's 10 years ago. So they're grown-ups now.
They're grown now.
Yeah. So I think about like my daughter's 14. And when I started stepping into the public eye, so to speak, and speaking and then doing a podcast and that, she cringes all the time when folks come up or talk to me. And so I'm like, all right. And she's like, don't say my name. It's like, I promise, Maddie Camp, I will not say your name on the air.
Yeah.
So now I make it a point to always say her name on the air.
Well, I understand that. I've tried to let my kids have the most normal life they could have. So a lot of times I tried to stay out of the schools, because, you're, like you said, your kids are already, you don't want to embarrass your kids.
Right.
Yeah.
So do they play sports, your boys?
All of them do, yeah.
Yeah, baseball, football.
They all played baseball and football, and then 2 of them are still playing. My middle son is a linebacker at Itawamba Community College, and then my youngest son, Drew, is also a middle linebacker. He plays for DeSoto Central.
Nice. I tell you what, look, that was the one thing for me when I got older and could no longer play. And that's why Coach Camp have roots all in coaching was I knew I couldn't walk away. I knew I could not walk away from the game. Yeah. And so when I had kids, it was a no-brainer. I was going right back out there on the field and start coaching them. And now that my daughter is nearing the end of her softball legacies, grandkids, that's what I got to look for. I got to have my grandkids get older so I can start coaching them. So you dive into wanting to be a mayor, and your family supports this, and you decide to run for mayor in 2013. What were some of the challenges or hurdles you found yourself having to overcome? Because whenever you just first step into politics or any kind of thing that is whatever that is in the public eye, you have to make a name for yourself. So what was some of those challenges and how did you navigate that?
In 2013, one of the big issues facing Southaven, there had been some controversy with the previous mayor, some criminal investigations at that time. So the city was in a tough situation. The city was looking for someone to come in and, basically help restore our good name, get us out of the negative spotlight, because Southaven has always been a great city and always had a great reputation. But during that time, we had some unusual, unusual negative attention called to us. Mm-hmm. And so, when people came to me and when I consulted with my family and friends before making the decision, I think that, and I'm thankful for that, but I think that the main thing they thought I could offer was to help us restore our name, to bring integrity back to our operations. And so I like to think that during the last 10 years, that's one of the first things that I made a lasting impact is I did come in and, bring our integrity back to our operations, and also make it a more professional operation, take some of the government politics out of the day-to-day operations and make it to where it's run more like a professional business. So that's one of the biggest things that I had the responsibility of doing in 2013. Then there were some other big economic projects that were on hold because of the city's controversy. And so I kind of had to take the baton in a hurry and run with those, and happy to see that we were able to make a lot of those projects happen. One of the first ones was the Tanger Mall. That's a huge project that became reality in 2015. So from 13 to 15, I spent a lot of time, bringing that project back to life. And so that was, one of the things I'm thankful for is we didn't let those things get away. We jumped in the office in a hurry and got those things done.
So what were you doing prior to 2013?
I'm a career insurance agent.
Okay.
I've had, after my baseball career, I played a few years in pro ball in the minor leagues. And then in 92, I came home and started an insurance business. And so that's been my career before politics.
Do you think that helped you out some?
No doubt. I mean, I do the same thing. It's people may think that's crazy when I tell them, but what is my job? My job is to put smiles on people's faces as much as I can. I have a customer service job. And so my career in insurance, developed me unintentionally, but it developed me for this career.
Sure. I'm a huge believer in whatever it is you're doing in life is giving you tools to work with for that next thing that's going to come. And we all go through seasons, and you never know from one decade to the next how much that might change or transform. I can tell you, living proof. When I got on the fire department, I thought I'd be there for 45 years and I was going to be this old crusty chief. Clearly, that was not in the cards for me, and things changed. And in the end, there were so many moments as I grew in the different jobs that I had that helped prepare me for this exact moment right now and being able to do the things that I'm doing, not just teaching at a school or not just speaking to a crowd or doing a podcast, but there was a culmination. And so you're right, being an insurance agent is somebody that you are looking out for other people, and you have to communicate with them. You have to build relationships. You have to network. One of the things that I've had Mayor Johnson on here. I've had some other, Bobby Chamberlain with the United States Mississippi Supreme Court. I had some different folks in. And one of the things that I'm always fascinated by is some of their mentorships that they went through, some of the people that were huge influences on them. Recently, Milton Kirkendall came on my show. I'm sure you're familiar with Mr. Kirkendall. And some of his mentors were very fascinating to me. So I'm curious, who would you attribute and what were some of those skill sets that you got from some of your early years, maybe some mentors you had?
Well, starting really early, I have a brother. Alan is my brother that's 2 years older than me. So Alan has always been I think he's been my biggest fan, but he's definitely been my biggest critic. But, but like the Bible says, iron sharpens iron. And
that's right.
Alan has always been my grounding factor, to help me see things the way they really are. So my brother has definitely been, a huge mentor for me. But then, then moving on, again, like we talked about earlier, I was blessed to have some tremendous coaches. My dad as well. My dad was my first coach. He was the one that, taught us the basic skills in the backyard. And my dad's a hardworking man. I'm blessed to still have him. And so I give a lot of, credit to him for teaching me a no nonsense way of living. My dad's a no nonsense guy. He's a black and white guy. When he tells you what the rules are, that's what the rules are. And so my brother and I were raised that way. And so, anyway, that served me well, what he taught me. But then again, the other coaches that I had growing up through school and then getting into the professional world, the sales trainers, things like that, picked up, pieces of good things from a lot of people along the way.
Mm-hmm. I had a student recently that told me that one of the things he appreciated about the podcast was that it seemed like from one week to the next, there was the same vein, even though it was different guests and there was different conversation pieces. A lot of it led back to a lot of the same philosophies or discussion points that we had made. And it's always fascinating to me. And I don't think that it's a misnomer that so many individuals have influence through coaching. And it doesn't matter what the sport is, not necessarily, but ultimately that structure and the idea that, there are expectations that are set. I find it fascinating that you were able to listen to your dad. It sounds like you had a strong appreciation for who he was. He didn't move the goalpost on you, as they say, and you knew what was expected. And that makes it easier to be able to perform. But the unique thing is you were the son. And I got to be honest with you, my kids did not want to listen to dad when I was coaching. Even now, my daughter loves to push back, where I know other players would not do that because they're not as comfortable with doing that. Obviously, your dad. But I have to say this, whenever you find somebody that has your best interest involved and you're willing to listen to them, the sky can be absolutely the limit. I do reference a lot of my past guests because I feel like there's just so much relevance to it. We had Mr. Kevin Williams, which is the CFO of Drake Outfitters. And the thing he attributed so much of his leadership to was his grandfather, who had an amazing work ethic. And the thing that I loved about him was he told the story about how his grandfather expected you to at least give your best. And if it wasn't good enough for the situation, at least you gave your best. And he grew from that. And hearing his story, listening to what you're telling me here, so many of these things are just, it's like there's a huge puzzle out there that I'm trying to put together. And each of you guests that come in here and you tell me about your history, I think you're putting those pieces together for me. So, Mayor, since 2013, going into 10 years, I don't think that now help me out, because I did do some research on this. If I'm not mistaken, population's around 56,000. I don't know if you know these numbers or not.
It's a little bit, that was the last census. It's obviously a little bit higher than that now, probably closer to 58 now.
Okay. So it is, from what I was able to research, the third largest city in Mississippi. And it is about a third the size of Jackson, Mississippi. Here's what I would say. That's no small task. I mean, that's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts, if you will. So as a mayor, one of the things I'm curious of, especially in a leadership position where you have so many things that you have to be aware of and just different items and different people and different interests. Mayor Johnson shared this with me. He said a lot of times citizens will come to him and they will voice their concerns. They'll have their ideas about things they think are important. And he says a lot of times it's not that he thinks differently. He feels the same way, but you can't just fix everything. You have to choose, pick, so on and so forth. So who are some of the people that you trust to help you with that?
Well, obviously, on day one, for anything to happen in city government, you have to be able to work with the board of aldermen, and so we're blessed, now that we have a good working relationship. Anytime there's changes in 2013, we had a lot of new people, and it took a while for everybody to kind of learn their role. But then it becomes a smooth operating machine, and I think that we've been blessed in Southaven that we've learned to have a mutual respect for each other. My board has worked well with me, and I've tried to always, work well with them. And so I think that's one of the key things. But then the other thing is you just have to be a good manager. In management, it's not about what you do. It's about, and just like you allude to the coaching analogy, it's the same thing. Winning teams or winning organizations are a group of talented people that learn to work well together. So I have 11 departments, and so I have department heads that I manage those people, and then they manage their departments, and I support them, and I rely on them. And so we use the creativity of those 11 key people. And so I like to think that, I'm somewhat the point guard of the quarterback. I'm not doing everything. I have great people around me. So this is not the first time you've heard that, but the key to a winning organization is putting the right people in the right places and supporting them and working well together.
Yeah, I think that I like the analogy you just put in there as far as being the quarterback, because, anytime you're in a position where you realize you're only going to be as good as your team, and so ultimately you have to trust that team, but at the same time you have to make decisions. And that was one of the things too that Mayor Johnson had mentioned, was the fact that, at the end of the day, it may not always be the decision everybody agrees with or likes or wants, but you have to be the one that's willing to make the decision. And sometimes that is a very tough decision to make, obviously. So in Southaven, obviously, with so many different challenges, and we are at a point, DeSoto County help me out if I'm way off on this. I want to say in the early 2000s, maybe you have a better time frame on that, it started booming. DeSoto County just exploded, and it started spreading east and west, deep into Olive Branch, and then, of course, further south as far as you could possibly think. When you got into this role, and this was something that Corey Usselton was recently on, he mentioned the challenges is being able to predict the growth, because the schools just start to fill up so quick and you have to expand. So as mayor, you have term limits. So what I'm looking at is, how do you start to manage that? Because DeSoto County continues to thrive, which is not a bad thing, but at the end of the day, it is a challenge. So how do you try to mitigate some of those things or see the future before it happens?
The main thing you got to understand is, in my day-to-day, I think I have to do my job daily as though I'm going to be here forever, although I know I'm not. And so I can't just, look in terms of 4 years. I have to make decisions and advocate for decisions daily, that may not become reality or may not apply for years in the future. But for a city or any organization to continue to be successful, you got to have vision. You got to look in the future. And so we've done a lot of that. We've done a lot of long-term planning, and there have been some things during my 10 years that, that we started early on, and it's taken us 8 to 10 years for these things to become reality. So the growth actually started in DeSoto County, specifically in Southaven, in the early 90s. That's when it started really changing. But it's not stopped. It's just been an ongoing thing and continues to grow. And I hear the challenges. We have the traffic challenges, and and there's crime challenges. That comes with population growth. It comes with economic growth. It's just natural for that. And so those are two of the biggest things that we have to address and plan the future for. But again, I've got a good team around me. We keep keep that vision in front of us of where we want our city to be in the future. And so I think that's what you got to do. That's the key to preparing for the future, is to to look down the road and weigh the challenges that you face now and then assess what you project those to be in the future.
Absolutely. As we are about to step into some of the things I want to talk about, Silo Square, I want to talk about Snowden Grove, some of the big moments that put not just Southaven, but I'm going to even say Mississippi on the map in some areas. I want to just take a quick break from our sponsors, and we are going to be right back after this.
Boba Cream is a veteran-owned, family-friendly business serving delicious boba tea and desserts with a commitment to quality and customer satisfaction. 131 West Commerce Street, Hernando, Mississippi. Go to msbobacream.com for more information.
All right, welcome back. And we are here with Mayor Darren Musselwhite from Southaven. We're going over a few things, kind of getting some ideas about not just the person, but the vision and the job itself. Because let's just face it, anytime you are the leader of any type of entity that has so many moving parts, you got to trust other people and you got to have a vision for things. We've been talking about that. And so now, Mayor Musselwhite, one of the things I'm looking at is we have Silo Square that is going up. And that had to be a huge project. And you just talked about before we went to the break about how sometimes a vision will come to you, you start working on it, and it just takes some time. Mayor Johnson talked about that with the exit over off of I-69 onto, I believe it is Getwell, and how that just took like 20 years to make it all come together. Sometimes you have to have that vision that's not going to even come to fruition while you're in office. So how long has Silo Square been on the radar?
Silo Square is an interesting development. Brian Hill, obviously deserves all the credit for that. A lot of people don't realize that when someone has to, risk their whole financial future or all the success they've had in business, to make something like that happen, there has to be a large investment up front. And there's a lot of risk involved. So I credit Brian Hill and his team, for making a vision become reality. I will say that, years ago, early in my career, one of the things that I used to communicate in my early speeches was I wanted to see Southaven have more entertainment value and recreational value. I wanted to see it be a place where for people of all ages. So like years ago, I remember when I was in my 20s and I came back from my baseball career, I was looking for a place to live. I was single at that time. And really there was nothing. And, Southaven has been great for having residential neighborhoods with families. We've mastered that. It was a great place to grow up, still is. And so, but what we were lacking is that for young professionals, those people in their 20s, the people that are empty nesters. And so at that time, no one stayed in Southaven. They would go, into Mud Island in Memphis, or they'd go to East Memphis to live. And so I communicated this early in my mayoral career that I would love to see us have what I called at that time Snowden Square. And it was it was kind of a piggyback or a copy of Overton Square. Overton Square in Memphis is a place where it's a walkable community. It's got tons of restaurants, fun things to do. And so I kept communicating this vision of let's have an entertainment district. Let's have a Snowden Square. And so I guess somewhere along the way, Brian Hill, kind of took that ball and ran with it. And to say that he has built it, it couldn't be better. I mean, everything that we envisioned back then, it's that and much more, and it's still rolling. It is it's one of the hottest things.
It's still under construction, obviously.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's looking great. You got so many restaurants coming into there, and then of course it's uniquely, awesomely located directly across from Snowden Grove. I can only imagine if you're a business owner, you had to be pumping your fist if you got one of those spaces. Because I mean, look, I don't have to tell you anymore. Being a baseball guy, from early spring to late fall, baseball/softball is in full blossom. It is bumping. And I can remember growing up, I grew up in Walls, and the hot place to go was State Line Road. And you go over to State Line Road, you had lollipops, you had a cinema, you had the bowling alley. And that was it. I mean, that was your trifecta. Now, don't get me wrong. Lots of great memories during that time. So many fun times. Your parents, and by the way, Southaven back then, and I'm talking late 80s, they could drop you off up there and you could spend all day Saturday with your buddies and they didn't have to worry about anything. You were going to be safe. You had the 3 areas you could go to. You go do some bowling, play some video games, go roll, whatever. You had everything in that little spot and it was very safe. Now, obviously, things have changed across the world. This isn't unique to Southaven, obviously, but that does bring up another thought. So obviously over there in that Silo Square area, I mean, we're close to Memphis and stuff, and crime is something you have to be concerned with. So what is some of the ideas or some of the vision that you have about how to keep that place, that area, safe of crime best you can? Do you have any kind of game plan on that you could talk about?
It's something that has to be addressed. You can't, you mentioned the way Southaven was in the late 80s, and you say it well. I mean, that, everything at that point was in the State Line Road area, and Southaven's grown tremendously since then. Well, there's a lot of other dynamics, and you touched on that too. There's things that have happened around the world. There's societal changes. So I answer this question fairly frequently. People say, well, Southaven used to be this, Southaven used to be that. And it did used to be that. Hernando used to be this, used to be that. You name the place, and it's different than it was years ago. And that's something, again, that you have to prepare for. There are challenges that come with growth. Southaven has grown tremendously. And with the addition of these, attractive places like Silo Square, anytime you build a city or improve a city to where people want to be there. And when I say want to be there, not just live there, they want to visit there.
Sure.
They want to do business there. They want to be there. And Silo Square is one of those places. And we have a lot of other places in Southaven where people want to be. Well, when you attract tourism, tourism by its nature is positive. It brings a lot of economic benefits to the city, allows the city to improve amenities for all the citizens. However, there is a negative tourism. You have when you bring up people to an area, there's always going to be a percentage of people that choose to do whatever they choose to do, that choose to do
attract
bad
things. Players.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you're going to have tourism, you got to know that a piece of that is coming with it.
Sure.
And so the mentality that we've taken in Southaven is we understand the value of tourism, and our doors are open. We want to welcome anyone that wants to come to our city. We welcome that. However, we are going to be very, very disciplined in our message that if you choose to commit crime and cause problems here, that we're going to fight every crime. Even the petty things, we're going after that.
Yeah.
And it's a zero toleration policy. And I give credit to our police. Our current police administration does an incredible job with that. We have an outstanding police department. And they have that mentality. I mean, whether it's a $200 shoplifting charge or something much more severe, we're going to enforce the laws in our city. And I just believe strongly that you can't give in to the small crimes, or else you're going to have larger crimes. And so we have a zero toleration policy. We welcome everybody here. We just ask that you come in, enjoy the city, and don't commit crime.
Yeah, keep it safe. That's the one thing that I feel I can say this, even though it's a generality, I feel like I can say this with confidence. People in general want to just feel safe. They want to be in a place that they feel like they can raise their families and they don't have to constantly look over their shoulder. Not to say that you should not be aware of your scenario, so don't get that wrong. But in the end, people want to have that feeling that you can go into town, your wife can go into town without you, and things are going to be okay. And you just touched on something that I'm passionate about myself. I am a retired firefighter paramedic, and I have tons of police officers that are friends and stuff. Recently, we had Sheriff Tuggle on here. And that is what you said. And that is you cannot let the little things go, because little things will become big things. And ultimately, I feel like that you see so much rampant crime in these bigger cities because there's been a back seat to punishment. There's been a back seat to taking a proactive role in, stopping that kind of thing, that kind of activity. And so I feel like that's a great message. And I know there are going to be a lot of listeners around DeSoto County that hear that. And that is a good message for them to know and take home with them, that there are proactive moves being done. And I know Sheriff Tuggle mentioned that, and that the communication and the overall goal is to create an environment where people can be okay in their lives. They can go into Silo Square. They can go down Goodman Road, go up to the whatever restaurants they want to go to and feel safe with it. Just touching on the fire stuff, you may not know this. I was a firefighter paramedic here in Southaven in 2001. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I started my city career. I started out with Eudora, which is very rural. Loved it down in Eudora, EMS, and then moved to Southaven Fire Department just before transferring over to Memphis. And I remember I was stationed at Station 2, which is in Greenbrook, but occasionally I get sent over to Station 4, I believe it is, over there by Silo Square. And I just remember that feeling like the country. Yeah. We go set out in the back and you didn't see anything. I think this was maybe even a little bit pre-Snowden. It was like barely in the inception of things in the early 2000s. And I'm going to say things have changed a little bit.
Yeah, things have changed tremendously where Station 4 is located. And you're right. It used to be surrounded by fields, and now it's it's a focal point of our city and high demand. There's high demand in that area. You touched on a few minutes ago the fact that Salo Square is across from the park. Brian Hill I've heard him say it many times, that development wouldn't exist there if it weren't for Snowden Park and the improvements that we've done. And you're so right about baseball and softball, but there's been so many things that have been added to Snowden now. We've made tremendous investments in tennis and soccer.
Oh, okay.
The amphitheater, we just invested $10 million in the amphitheater. And then we built a bridge. A lot of people, speaking of vision, don't understand that. I have the luxury of hearing developers talk about how important the bridge is to connecting pedestrian traffic on both sides of Getwell from a safety standpoint, but also it connects commerce. And so a lot of the developments that you don't see yet, there's a lot of pending developments on the park side as well. And so the bridge will play an even bigger role in that in the future as well. Switching back to crime for a minute. You asked me, I want to make sure I answered your question, specifically what we're doing. When you grow, you've got to grow with your growth. And some people don't understand this, but our police department, we've increased our police budget in the last 5 years from about $12.1 million to now $19.4 million. That's about a 60% increase in your police budget. And so for the people listening, let that sink in. That's a 60% budget increase in our police in the last 5 years. And you have to do it. If you want to face the challenges of the future, you've got to grow. We've done that. We've increased our officer count by 36% during that same 5-year period. So all that is to prepare for the future growth and to make people continue to feel safe.
That is exactly what I was hitting on, was the investment part of things, because and I've heard this in different conversation pieces of a person not understanding why so much money is being spent in a particular area. But what I have always tried to emphasize is that's what proactivity is all about. You don't wait until there's a problem and then try to catch up. You got to think ahead. You got to work ahead. And the best way to do that, the models are everywhere. It's not like you have to figure it out when you wake up and you're like, oh, I don't know what this city's going to be like. All you have to do is look around the country. And there are plenty of examples of what can happen. So you've got to be ahead of that. That said, that actually was a perfect segue, because it was exactly the line I was going, is now that the city has grown so much and you're going to have even more of an influx of visitors, me personally, being the paramedic person that I am, I always wonder what is being put in place to at least ramp up emergency services during peak seasons or such. For myself, working in Memphis, obviously it comes and goes. Anytime there was events on Mud Island, et cetera, there were things that were put in place for us to be able to have an emergency response. I'm big on mass casualty first response, because so often, no matter how many ways we practice it, it's still going to be a cluster. But you have to have resources in place. So on the EMS fire side of things, are there some changes? Are there some ideas about what could come next?
Yeah, great question, and thank you for bringing that up, because a lot of times when we start talking about crime, we start talking about police, and which is appropriate, but that doesn't mean that we don't also have to make the same plans and adjustments in our fire EMS operation, which we have. We have fire station number 5 that is pending that project. Okay. We've run into some problems with that, but with the construction of it. But that should be resolved, and we should have the station open in mid-24, which will make a big impact on the southeastern part of our city. We've done the same thing in fire. We've added personnel. We have an outstanding fire chief and his administrative team as well.
Oh, Danny Scallions.
Danny Scallions. Yeah, Danny Scallions is a great leader in our city, and so he, again, talking about putting the right people in the right positions. He's a fire expert. I'm not a fire expert. So, he does a great job of having vision, tell us where we need to be. So there's been additions with personnel and, again, the fire station and equipment. I like to say that, and other people have said this as well, that we keep our fire team with the most, cutting edge technology, the most cutting edge equipment. We take pride in that. And so, again, we're prepared for the future, with our EMS as well. I mentioned the amphitheater. That's an example. When you pack 10,000 plus people into an event, things are going to happen. And so there's a lot of, especially in the heat. So our EMS team, does an incredible job with special events like that, the fair, the tournaments, things like that. So when you have big events that bring people to a high density of people to a small area. It does put a strain on your personnel. But we do plan for that and are prepared for the future with that as well.
Yeah, and I know Danny personally. We went through paramedic school together back in the day with Miss Brenda Hood down at Northwest Mississippi Community College. And I got to tell you, Danny's a super guy. Across the board, whenever he got up to the chief spot, I was like, man, they could not, talking about they being Southaven, could not have had a better person. I mean, there are other people I know, but he's a rock star. So, Danny, I know you're listening to this. And yes, I am mic dropping for you, my friend. Look, I'm going to tell you, have been so many changes since 2001. There were only 2 units in availability at the time, and we only had Baptist DeSoto at that time. And now, of course, you have Methodist, which is out on the far east side of town. I had to figure out which direction I was going. Clearly, not just the improvements, not just the expansion, but I'm going to give you and whoever else has to vote on this, and you can help me out with that, huge credit with the increase in pay. Because I'm going to tell you something, back in 2001, I would have been perfectly happy to spend my entire lifetime in DeSoto County working. But I got to be honest, back in the early 2000s, nobody in the area could compare to Memphis pay. You go up there, you're going to work a lot harder, you're going to run a lot more calls, you're going to get a lot of experience, but they paid 2 and 3 times that. It's not that case anymore. People can make a great living right here in DeSoto County. So I'm giving you credit. I don't know who to credit that to, if it's just you or other people involved, but the pay it's comparable. It's there now. And Southaven has some of the best firefighters I know personally.
I don't know that I will take the credit for that, other than to say what I said earlier, is that I do try to listen to our department heads and we do market studies every year, and we try to make sure that our personnel are paid at the top of the pay scale. And we are there. I'm sure that there are many that would like to make comments that maybe they feel like it should be different, but we are committed to keeping our men and women paid at the top of the pay scale. One thing that's important to note is, you mentioned Memphis. When you go across the state line, the property tax structure is different. Yep. A lot of those cities, have a much larger property tax base. A tax rate
sure.
than we do in DeSoto County. So it's not always an equal comparison, when you're comparing a city the size of Memphis and a different state laws, different tax structure. But we try to do a good job of every year going to the market, analyzing the market, and making sure our men and women are paid at the top of the pay scale.
Yeah, I can tell you that back in the day, that was all anybody talked about. Now I can tell you, because I teach at Southwest Community College, people talk about coming down to DeSoto County to work. And the truth is, across the nation, there is a medical professional shortage as a whole, but some of the best individuals I know stayed down here in DeSoto County. And that's the one thing the big cities have trouble doing. They have trouble keeping the best because they're going to go where the demand is, and they're always going to be able to demand a little more. So I'm just throwing a dog a bone on that one. I'm proud of Southaven for what they've done, and I'm proud of DeSoto County as a whole. Across the board. I love Hernando. Love Hernando, and have several great friends on Hernando Fire Department and EMS. So DeSoto County as a whole is definitely, I think they're leading the way. I don't believe that you should ever think of yourself as an individual being too small to lead by example to the world. And I can tell you that I feel like DeSoto County is doing that. Anytime I've traveled anywhere and people find out where I'm from and they know about DeSoto County in general, they are... they have a lot of great things to say about it. That is what's leading me to my next comment. Do you think, and I think that it's probably a baited question, but do you think that growing up here is giving you a better perspective of how to lead as the mayor because you know where it's come from? And there was once a saying, and don't get me messed up on this, there's a quote that says you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. I don't know who said that. So if y'all figure it out, y'all can send me a text on that. But that is true to me in so many aspects of life. Do you find that to be beneficial?
I definitely do. Having seen Southaven in the early years, and then seeing it for what it is now, I think it is beneficial, to know how far we've come, mm-hmm. and to know the things that made Southaven a great city in the early days are still the same things that make it great today. It's just bigger and there's more challenges, but Southaven is a great place. And like you said, DeSoto County in general is highly respected around the state and the region. And there's a reason that we have, I say this all the time when people complain about traffic, there's a reason you have traffic. Exactly. Because people want to be here. I mean, mm-hmm. if you go to Manhattan, and you have to take a cab everywhere you go because you can't park or take cars. There's a reason for that because
Sure.
people want to be there. Obviously, that's a much bigger example than here, but I do think that in DeSoto County and specifically in Southaven, that we have traffic problems and we have growth because we have a nice place to live, and it's still nice, and people want to be there.
Absolutely.
But back to your question, I do think that my having witnessed Southaven in the early years, and then for the last 10 years, seeing the new challenges and things, I think that that it all works together to make me a better leader for the city.
So I know we're getting close to the finish line, but there are so many things I could ask you about. Of course, we could always go back to baseball, but one of the things that I was curious of, and maybe there's like several hot button topics, I don't know, but if you had to narrow it down to one or two items, what are one or two of the things that you see coming for Southaven that may be great challenges, or they just may be great improvements, or any of the above?
Well, the thing that people, it's not a sexy topic, but again, traffic. You see the Getwell project underway. It would be informative for the audience to know that projects the size of the Getwell expansion, those are not paid for just by local tax dollars.
Okay.
They're federal programs. And so the federal program that we received money for on that project, we made that application in 2015. That's how long it takes to get proper funding. So again, with vision, we have to plan things far in advance. So when citizens see a problem in the city and they think nobody knows about it or nobody's paying attention to it, I can assure you I'm thinking about that at 3:00 in the morning. That's been on my radar for a long time. It just takes time to get some of these projects done. But the Getwell project is so overdue, and it's going to make such a big difference with traffic there. But then going into the fun stuff, let's talk about the fun stuff. The Hotel Conference Center, that's a big, big deal. It's going to be in Southaven at the Lander Center. There's going to be a $60 million expansion with a convention center, $65 million Hilton Embassy Suites Hotel, all under one roof. The convention center is about 275,000 square feet. The hotel, 7 stories. 240 rooms, going to have 10,000 square foot restaurant attached to it, lazy river resort style swimming pool. It's truly something that's never been in DeSoto County before. So it will be a game changer in a positive way for the future of Southaven and DeSoto County. That's one thing that I've been working on since 2018. Working with the County Board of Supervisors, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, a lot of key people have come together to make that happen, and so it's going to be a big deal, and it will be under construction in early 2024. So that's something to really be excited about. It'll be the only convention center in the state of Mississippi with a hotel on site.
Wow. That was my next question, was when do you think the construction is? 2024? This is around the corner.
Yeah, it'll start. I mean, it's underway now. The bid packages are being created now, and the final design touches are being put on it with the architects. So it should bid in the early part of 2024, and you should see dirt moving in probably late spring of 24.
Man, that is amazing. That is why I have these questions, obviously, for you. So there's the insight that we would not have known otherwise. So moving forward, I know that the school systems are going to be really the bigger challenge too, as you have an influx of individuals. Families change, so you never know what the dynamic is of people moving in, moving out. That's hard to gauge. Mr. Russellton touched on the fact that how the upgrades are coming to every school, as far as turf football fields to all the schools over the next couple of years. I just want to highlight this for Southaven and for DeSoto County, because this is something that should not go unmentioned. Do you know Austin Riley?
I've met him. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I've met him.
I'm just saying, DeSoto County, with the schools that we have now that are getting larger and larger, I think we're going to 7A, with the fields that we're going to have and the opportunities that are out there. We have people like that, Blaze Jordan, that come out of DeSoto Central. We have several big league ball players. You talked about Lee Hodge, and we had Bill Selby back in the day that went pro for a while. DeSoto County is a growing area, and I just want to say this for the kids out there. And so if you have your child in the car with you driving down the road right now, tell them to tune in for a second. Opportunities are there. I remember growing up playing sports and feeling like we were just a speck of dust that would never be noticed down here. And you saw all these big leaguers everywhere else. I just want to say this. Mayor Musselwhite, what you're doing for the community, what you're doing in the realm of sports in general, also from Snowden Grove across the board. I think it's super major important. We've already touched on this episode how important coaching can be to your life, how that can mold you, how that can grow you. And anyways, I just wanted to bring that up. I would be remiss, and the Austin Riley thing was just really for me. I need to get him on the show. So
he would be a good guest, and we're obviously very proud of Austin Riley. And but as you touched on, he's not the only one. There have been people in the past. I mean, even going back to the '80s, people may not remember this, but there was a running back named Carl Byram in the '80s that played at Southaven High School and went on to be a starting running back for the great 1990 Buffalo Bills teams in the NFL. Terrence Davis is playing in the NBA from Southaven. Brandon Eccles is another football player from Southaven that plays for the New York Jets. So we've had, Keyshawn Abram played receiver for DeSoto Central about maybe 7-8 years ago, something like that. And I think he's on a practice squad with the New York Jets. So there's great stories. Austin is a great story. He's a great player. He's not just because he's from Southaven, but Austin has solidified himself as a great Major League Baseball player. He really is.
Two-time All-Star, just already a World Series champion.
Yeah.
I mean, N'Kobe Dean out of Horn Lake.
That's right, N'Kobe Dean as well. So we have a history of sports here, but you have to keep that going, and I appreciate your comments because it is so important. Whether you play sports or not, sports are a great part of American culture. And when you talk about our high schools, and Superintendent Usselton and I have had conversations about this, about the image of our schools and our sports programs and how important that is. And I commend him and the school board for making that commitment to put artificial turf on the football fields. And it goes beyond just the turf. It sends a message. It's the image, it's the commitment that we want to be number one in everything that we do in DeSoto County. So that's why those investments are so important.
Absolutely. And it's the investment in the kids, to be honest with you. And I just wanted to bring that up because I know what it was like for me growing up. And you look at the big picture and you think to yourself, the pros are never possible. Because you just don't think that that's going to happen. And it does happen. And it is happening. And you're absolutely right. Austin Riley has become a mecca move. I mean, he's a big time third baseman superstar. He's not just like made it to the show and had a cup of coffee.
Yes.
He's there to stay. And I wish him nothing but the best, obviously. And anyone else that's making that trick, because we had a few other individuals drafted into the minor leagues this past year. I saw pop up on my Facebook feed of friends that I have and their kids getting drafted into, the minors and stuff. So all those things said, I could talk to you forever. I just wanted to let you know that it's not lost on the citizens, the hard work, the dedication, the sacrifices that it takes. I remember personally Goodman Road whenever a portion of it was gravel. So when you want to talk about growth and changes, it has happened over the last 30, 40 years. I mean, there's been so many things, and I can only imagine what the future holds because it feels like it is a motion and a move that is in a positive direction, and I'm excited to see what comes next. So as we draw to the finish line, I would just be curious, what would you want to leave my listeners with today?
Something that I've touched on a little bit during our meeting today is just reminding everyone that things never stay the same. Like we use some sports analogies in our discussion today, and you have a history in sports, so you understand, and teaching and coaching, you understand this. A coach told me this a long time ago, and I'm ashamed I can't remember exactly which one did, but a coach told me and my teammates one time that he was trying to explain how important it is to each practice that you have, that you get better, that you take today and you become a better player today than you were yesterday. And in that message, he told everyone that you never stay the same. Things never stay the same. And if you think about that, it may be a gradual change, but nothing stays the same. You're either getting better or you're getting worse, whether it be a city, whether it be a school, a team, any kind of organization. And so I've always adopted that approach, and how that relates to the message I want to send to our listeners today is things are different in Southaven than they were. And again, I grew up in Southaven. I've been in Southaven a long time. It was a great city when it was small, but it's still a great city. And the same thing with the rest of DeSoto County. We're going to be facing some challenges. I mean, there's some things are not specific to our area. There are societal changes. I mean, look at what's going on around the world. Look at what happens everywhere now. So we could talk about that all day of what caused that, but the bottom line is we have to accept that there are challenges today that we didn't have before. but it doesn't mean that Southaven, DeSoto County can't continue to be a great place to live. And so I just want to leave that with people, that things do change, but we're still a great city, a great county, and it's still a great place to live.
And the number one thing that I took away from this was the intentionality of growth and the intentionality of making it better. Because like you said, if you're not getting better, then you're probably declining. But in order to get better, it has to be intentional. It has to be conscious. It has to be an effort. And that is what is happening within the city. Well, Mayor Musselwhite, I cannot tell you how blessed, honored, and thankful I am that you came down here today, shared some of your story. I hope that my listeners out there absolutely love it. And I'm going to wish you nothing but the best as you move forward with your career for the next 20 years. I'm just going to put a 20. I'm going to put a 20 spot on that for you.
Well, I don't know about that, but I thank you for your kind comments, and it's been my pleasure today. I've enjoyed this as well.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you to all my listeners. I'm going to ask you to please continue to tune in, subscribe, share, talk about the messages, because each and every week there's going to be something that is going to be in the message that is for you. And if you're not connecting with that week, you should tune in the next week, because that one was intended for you anyways. Hey, thank y'all so much. Go to my website, motivatewithcoachcamp.com. And until next time, Coach Camp out.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up, it's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better me. Better believe in your mind, cause it's everything. You can mold, shape, find almost anything. All it takes is some time and some clarity to find your identity. It's mind over everything. And when I feel like this, I'm immortal. 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 Don't I'm so gone, no, I'm never turning back. I won't stop, I'ma fight until there's nothing left. It's so on, you're gonna be hurting bad, cause I've been to hell and back. You don't wanna make me mad, I stay strong, you will never see me crack. And if you get in my way, you're gonna feel the wrath. Gotta say it to my face while he's looking back. Mirror breaks after math, when